somewhere in this world, right now, a heist is being planned. Not in a movie theater, not in a Netflix series, but in real life, in a real city, with real money on the line. The world thinks the mafia is dangerous, or the Yakuza, or the cartels of South America. But trust me, the most dangerous place on Earth is not a jungle, not a war zone, not a prison yard. It is a single square mile in the heart of Belgium, the Antwerp Diamond Quarter. On a rainy night like this one, the streets look quiet, almost peaceful. A few parked cars, a distant tram, the sound of rain on cobblestone. But behind these cold, gray walls, and under the watchful eyes of hundreds of high-tech security cameras, 80% of the world's rough diamonds sit waiting in the dark. $100 million worth of raw, uncut stones, locked away in a vault 2 floors underground. Most people look at those cameras and see a fortress. I looked at them and saw an invitation. My name is Leonardo, and this is the true story of the greatest diamond heist the world has ever seen, brought down by a half-eaten salami sandwich. My name is Leonardo, and I am not a thief. I consider myself a historian of security systems, a student of human behavior, and a very, very patient man. You see, to crack an unbreachable fortress, you do not need explosives. You do not need violence. You need time, and you need patience. For 2 long years, I rented a simple office inside the Diamond Center itself. I wore a suit. I smiled at the guards every single morning. I learned their names, their habits, their routines. I knew exactly when they took their coffee break. I knew exactly how long they looked at the monitors. And I knew exactly which sensor had a blind spot. But a mastermind is nothing without his crew. I needed people I could trust with my life, and with $100 million. First, the genius. A quiet, obsessive young man with round glasses and nervous hands. He could manipulate any digital wire, any alarm circuit, any electronic lock. Give him a schematic, and he would find a weakness in under 60 seconds. Then, the monster, a giant of a man with hands the size of shovels. He never spoke much, but when a mechanical lock needed to be forced open, there was no one better on the planet. And finally, Speedy, our driver, young, fast, and completely fearless behind the wheel. His only job was to keep his cool under pressure. His only job was to stay calm. That was his only job. I laid the blueprints on the table. They looked at the security specifications, and one by one, they all said the same thing. It is impossible, Leonardo. I looked each one of them in the eyes, and I said, nothing is impossible. The Diamond Center vault is 2 floors underground, behind 6 inches of reinforced concrete, and a door that weighs 3,000 kilograms. It is protected by 10 separate layers of security, seismic sensors that detect footsteps, Doppler radar that picks up breathing, infrared cameras that see body heat in total darkness, and a combination lock with 100 million possible combinations. 100 million. But here is the thing about perfection. Perfection does not exist. Every giant has an Achilles heel, and ours cost exactly €2. A simple can of women's hairspray, held at arm's length, sprayed subtly onto the thermal sensor, creates a thin layer of moisture that blinds the sensor completely, without triggering a single alarm. The engineers who built this system never thought of that. They forgot about a €2 can of hairspray. No bigger than a shirt button. Hidden inside, a standard red fire extinguisher on the wall, secretly recording every guard who punched in the digital code, day after day, until we had it memorized. And a physical key, replicated from a single high-resolution photograph, taken casually, while shaking hands with the head of security. 2 years of patience, a can of hairspray, a hidden camera, and 1 photograph. And the unbreachable fortress suddenly became an open door. It was the weekend after Valentine's Day, the most romantic weekend of the year, and the most profitable, because every diamond dealer in Antwerp had just received a fresh shipment of stones for the holiday rush. The vault was bursting at the seams. We entered at 2 in the morning, in pitch blackness, not a single light, not a single word spoken between us. We had rehearsed this moment so many times in our minds that we moved through those corridors like ghosts. Large panels of industrial styrofoam, held tightly against our chests, masked our body heat from the infrared sensors above us. 3 men, completely invisible to the cameras, floating silently through the dark. The genius moved to the magnetic field panel, his hands completely steady. He attached the custom-built aluminum frame he had built in his garage over 6 months, and one by one, the magnetic fields went silent. And then, the moment we had planned for 2 years, I placed the replicated key into the lock. I punched in the 100 million combinations we had stolen, and slowly, the heavy mechanical wheel began to rotate. The vault door swung open, and there it was, millions of dollars in raw diamonds, rough stones the size of marbles, glittering even in the darkness, solid gold bars stacked in neat rows, and cold hard cash, bundled in rubber bands, filling every shelf from floor to ceiling. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds, and then I got to work. The monster tore open steel deposit box after steel deposit box, his enormous hands bending metal like paper. The genius kept watch on the sensor readings, and I filled the bags. Blue heavy-duty trash bags, one after another, stuffed with the most valuable collection of stones and gold ever assembled in a single room. By the time the first light of dawn appeared above the city of Antwerp, We had sealed the vault behind us and walked out into the cold morning air with $100 million in blue trash bags. The perfect crime was complete. Dawn was breaking over the Belgian highway, a pale gray light on the horizon. The loot was safely packed in the trunk, and I allowed myself, for the very first time, to feel relief. But fear is a very strange thing. It does not live in the danger. It lives in the silence after the danger, when the mind has time to imagine all the things that could still go wrong. I could see it happening in real time. Speedy's knuckles turning white on the steering wheel, his eyes flicking to the mirror. Every 3 seconds, every car behind us was a police car in his mind. Every junction was a roadblock, every shadow a trap. First quietly, then louder. Dump the bags. Leonardo, dump the bags right now. They're going to stop us. I know it. I can feel it. Leonardo, we have to get rid of the evidence. I told him to breathe. I told him we were 20 minutes from the safe house. I told him to keep his eyes on the road and his hands on the wheel. But Speedy was already gone, lost somewhere inside his own panic. A man drowning on dry land. And then, in one single split second of absolute madness, he lunged across the car and grabbed the steering wheel. The car swerved violently across 2 lanes of E19, tires screaming on the asphalt, before slamming sideways to a halt on the muddy shoulder of the road, right next to the dark, foggy woods of Zemst. I sat there in the silence, my heart pounding, $100 million in the trunk, and a broken man behind the wheel. I had planned every single detail of this operation, every sensor, every lock, every camera, but I had not planned for human fear. Panic is infectious. Before I could physically stop him, Speedy had already thrown open the car door and was running toward the trunk. He grabbed the blue trash bags, not the bags with the diamonds, but the other bags, the bags containing our tools, our private receipts from hardware stores, the surveillance tapes from inside the Diamond Center, our entire paper trail, and he hurled them, blindly, into the thick green bushes of the forest. I stood there, watching him in absolute, silent fury. We had just pulled off the most sophisticated heist in Belgian history, and my driver was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs in a roadside forest next to a motorway. Three hours later, the universe played its final, brutal card. Enter August Van Camp, a grumpy, 70-year-old Belgian retiree who had lived his entire life on that road and who hated, with every fiber of his being, people who littered on his property. He was walking his dog through the forest that morning, as he did every single day, when he noticed the blue bags in the bushes. He kicked one in frustration, the way you kick a bag of garbage that someone has left on your front lawn. It tore open. No soda cans inside, no fast food wrappers. Instead, official stamped envelopes from the Antwerp Diamond Center slid out into the wet mud, and right next to them, carelessly wrapped in a sheet of aluminum foil, a half-eaten salami sandwich. August Van Camp stared at that sandwich for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his old brick Nokia phone, and called the local police. Our perfect crime was about to completely unravel. The police forensic technician could not believe his luck. The supermarket receipt in the bag gave him a precise timeline of our movements. The surveillance tapes gave them our faces, but the salami sandwich gave them my DNA. A week later, I was walking down the streets of Antwerp on a Tuesday morning, going to collect my mail, completely, entirely unaware that the game was already over. Suddenly, unmarked cars flooded the curb from every direction, doors flying open before they even stopped, armed officers surrounding me from every angle, and then silence. The lead detective walked toward me slowly, looked me directly in the eyes, and said, "Where is the $100 million? Leonardo?" I just looked back at him and smiled my finest smile. Because diamonds, they shine beautifully in the absolute dark, but when you turn on the searchlights, they vanish into thin air. There are more stories like this one, stories of brilliant plans, fatal flaws, and the twisted hand of fate, waiting to be told. If you want to be there when the next vault opens, hit that like button and follow this channel so you never miss what comes next. Because trust me, the next story is even better than this one.